I think a lot of what we've asked for as CII has been addressed in the budget. First and foremost is a focus on infrastructure. In fact, that continues to be there. The expenditures being enhanced by about 35%. We also set a glide path towards a fiscal deficit that takes into consideration the need for recovery, and I think that's also been addressed. We've also talked about encouraging domestic manufacturing. A lot of that has been addressed as well, including making sure a lot of the capital budget for the defense is going to be spent on Indian manufacturing. So I think in many ways, a lot of what we've asked for has come in. Some long-term plans as well for a green economy. We also like the fact that there's a lot of thinking on the urban planning for the long-term future. So I think a lot of positives is our takeaway.
And of course, the big headline being the 35% hike in CapEx for the 7 engines of growth, the various verticals as far as infrastructure goes. But TV Narendran, you know, this budget is coming bang in the middle of what? Global uncertainty when it comes to liquidity, ahead of our RBI's next meeting. And of course, inflation, which is at multi-decade highs in Europe, in America, and back home, it is also being red flagged. Is that at least a missed opportunity, some kind of inflation management, whether it was by, duty cuts or any other ways?
So there are some duty cuts, as you saw in some areas. But I think, investing in infrastructure, while I know it's not going to solve the problems overnight, is about helping the competitiveness of India and helping the supply side in India. And investment in infrastructure also creates jobs across the country, because infrastructure is being built across the country. It's going to take care of a lot of workers who are somewhere between agriculture and high-end manufacturing, because construction employs a lot of people. So I think while it doesn't fully address inflation, it addresses some of the concerns about incomes, because this money that is being spent is going to flow to a lot of people who are going to be working in constructing and building these infrastructure projects. So I think some actions have been taken, also some support for some of the other sectors that we've been talking about, the high contact sectors. So the MSMEs in tourism, hospitality are getting some support. I think the larger initiative also is about the digital infrastructure which is being created, inclusion, financial inclusion as well, through multiple initiatives. So while it is not specifically targeting inflation, in the short term, I think it is addressing many of these issues which are fundamental for the reason inflation is where it is today.
You brought up the disinvestment target. That brings me to the next question. 65,000 crore rupees. Do you think at a time when, you're seeing markets flirt with all-time highs, the way the stock markets have performed in 2020, 2021, this is conservative? This is not the time to step on the gas. We've already been wondering why, when markets are performing the way they were, we didn't see higher proceeds from disinvestment.
I think the disinvestment process takes a bit of time, as we've seen it in the past. And I think we made a beginning. And as you know, there have been 2 cases even in the last week. I think what is important is a lot of these assets up for disinvestment are actually in the core manufacturing sectors, for instance. If I leave out Air India, if you look at a lot of the others. And there is a lot of potential, because a lot of these assets have been created, capital has been spent, but not being put to productive use. And I think private sector can come in and get more out of this capital that has been invested, unlock more value, give money to the government, which it can spend on education, health, and infrastructure. So I think capital will flow to the right hands for the right reasons. Assets will flow to the right hands for the right reasons, and hopefully you'll have a more productive economy.
Mr. Narendran, we were figuring out which were the top 3 words in the budget speech. It is development, invest, and infrastructure. See, that's, of course, has been the larger message coming in from the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman. But a lot of it is, of course, going to be for long term. So for short term, for job creation, or whether it is, just battling inflation, battling the pressure on the wallet, getting consumption back, a miss?
Not really. Again, Narendran, I think where do jobs come from? It can only come from government or from private sector. So private sector investment, as the finance minister herself said, needs to be crowded in with public sector investment, and that's what they've been doing. So I don't think we should expect, significant disruption in every budget. I think we should define a course, keep that course, improve on execution, because obviously, as we've seen in the last few years, The delivery is still a bit short of the promise, but at least the direction is right. So I think we should focus on getting the execution, spending the money that is being kept aside, and that will create jobs, that will create investment, because the best way to create jobs is to have both government investment and private sector investment. And I think we're seeing private sector investment coming back. So I'm positive about it. And I think we need to create jobs, and those jobs can only be created by private sector in addition to what can be created by the government. And we cannot keep looking at government to create jobs. I think private sector needs to create jobs.
So are all of you in the private sector going to do that? If the government is going to hike its capex by 35%, it's now all of your turn, Mr. Narendran.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ball is with us in some sense. And I think what we saw from our members in the National Council was also that people are going to be investing, people are going to be hiring. Some sectors certainly need help, which is the high contact sectors. Some of the MSMEs need help. But a lot of our members have been positive even before the third wave of the pandemic. And the way it looks like, the third wave of the pandemic seems to be receding fast. And we hope that we'll have a good year next year.
Mr. Narendran, you know, as CII president, we're of course talking in the times of when everything is digital, including assets. I don't know if you invest in cryptos, I don't know if you invest in NFTs, but that 30% tax which has now been announced for digital assets, for virtual assets, as has been introduced. What do you think it's going to do for discretionary income and the way, you know, the Gen Zs and the millennials had been investing, and which is the way we've seen penetration of the markets?
So I think we've seen two initiatives, right? One is the announcement that the RBI will come up with a digital rupee during this year. That is one positive thing, and it will have a significant impact. Central banks across the world are grappling with the consequences of this. The other part is the CII view has also been that some of these cryptocurrencies and digital assets need to be treated like securities like everything else, because it is in some sense a speculative investment. So, you know, you need to treat it like that. And I think the government is looking at it from that point of view. It will probably bring a little bit more, sort of, it'll calm the sentiments a bit, and you will treat it like all other securities. You know, if it's an investment for the long term, rather than a speculative investment for a, you know, daily roller coaster ride.
And my final question to you, Mr. Narendran, before we let you go, there is, of course, an exuberance when we look at the infrastructure stocks, steel stocks, banking stocks, and that's obviously because of the higher capex outlay, you know, for infrastructure, the 7 engines of growth. Housing, of course, has been spoken about. Can we expect significant capacity additions at a time when prices are also volatile? So once again, will India Inc. do its bit? The markets are expecting you to.
Absolutely. I think we will. You know, fundamentally, private sector investment comes in when demand grows, which is there now. Profitability improves, which is also there now for many sectors. Balance sheets are deleveraged, which has happened over the last year for many capital-intensive sectors. So I think all the conditions are right, and we just needed the government to keep the policy stable, no flip-flops, continue to spend on infrastructure. So the government has done its bit. So I guess it's for us in private sector to now to do our bit.